International supply chains and logistics are hard. There are many risks: geopolitical factors, natural disasters, supply chain bottlenecks and disruptions, you name it. But technology has the promise to make this industry better. AI and blockchain, amongst other technologies, have the power to improve supply chain and make them more adaptable and resilient. Heard this before? Wondering how is it different now? Who are the most important players in this space? What's coming next? What is the future of logistics? Join me to learn the answer to this and many more questions as I interview Joel Taylor, a logistics and tech innovator, a CTO with 20 years of experience in the space, and a co-founder still in stealth mode, who has made his mission to radically improve the way logistics work around the world. Joe, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mateo.
Let's start with the basics. Can you share your personal journey in logistics and technology and what inspired you to get into this space?
Sure. Well, I kind of fell into it through family means. My family actually goes back 60 plus, 70 plus years. I have some family members that will tell you it goes back further than that, but really just a logistics focused family thing for as long as I can recall. And so, out of high school, I was always very interested in development, and I would build programs and basic games and things like that in high school. Was very interested, and I was given the opportunity through an uncle who had a budding software based logistics 3PL, who was looking for somebody to come on board and help drive the development of that platform. It was very early at that point, and so that's where I spent the last 20 years of my career was working within that software package, building it up to be an enterprise level software as a service that actually serviced multiple Fortune 1000 companies and even one Fortune 100 company. And it was the package itself was very robust. We, for those companies, it was by and large their full transportation management platform. They would use it for anything that would touch supply chain and the logistics space. So as you can imagine, it was a pretty in-depth package, and I gained a lot of experience doing that.
That's amazing. And with that experience, what is your perspective today on the current availability of end-to-end solutions in
Yeah.
logistics?
Yeah, I'd say that there's a couple of larger, platforms that I'm sure everybody can think of in their head that would tout that they can achieve that. But I would challenge everybody to, think of it in terms of, well, you may have every aspect of the supply chain within your software offering, but how intertwined are they really? How interoperable are they? And really, my main goal and what I've kind of grown my niche within my expertise is within the user experience space. So really trying to automate as much of that as possible and bring that kind of technology to all of the various smaller companies that really require a much easier onboarding process for their employees. And those platforms that have been around for a long time and do have a lot of tools within the logistics space, a lot of very advanced, robust tools, really do not offer that within their platforms. They don't offer that ease of onboarding, that user experience that really drives the adoption of all of the tools together.
How do you see AI changing the way that things are done today and predict and solve logistic issues? Do you see a time where we have different real-time solutions and it just changes the game altogether?
I do. I do. I think that that's really where we're heading, and I think we're heading there pretty rapidly. The logistics space, specifically the transportation end of logistics has always been a very slow adopter of technology. And I don't see that changing too drastically, mainly because, I just haven't seen it to date. I come across plenty of current, uh, medium-sized corporations, $1 billion, give or take, that are still operating without a TMS at all. They're utilizing spreadsheets. They're going to carrier websites. They're, doing a lot of this very manual effort to achieve what they really could automate large swaths of if they would adopt some technology. And there's so much out there, from ranging from full automation within some of those tools of at least those certain aspects. Uh, but really what I think is going to drive the growth from AI standpoint is that ease of use and the offering being something that can be adopted within the smaller corporations. Because I'm kind of romantic when it comes to the economy and the global economy. And the last thing that I would prefer is for, the larger corporations that can, gain access to the tools within AI to help drive automation, um, pulling further and further away. So that's where I'm really spending a lot of my attention, a lot of my time is trying to bridge that gap and see if there's some solutions where we can drive that growth within the smaller marketplace, to democratize that economy and keep it from really being consolidated further and further.
And so smaller players it's harder for them to get access to the leading technology. It's harder for
Mhm.
them to onboard. And so they will you say that smaller players get caught off guard more often than larger players?
They sure do. I've seen it time and time again. And typically what happens is they if they want to remain independent, they'll end up relying on the larger players in some fashion. Within the US, transportation market, a lot of the, let's say the smaller asset base carriers, or just driving even further to the owner operators. Somebody owns their own truck and they're operating their own business just out of that one truck. There's so many of those in the US. They really rely a lot on the brokerage market and the larger transportation companies to help augment them with loads, and they lose margin by doing so. They lose profit margin and they lose the ability to compete. And eventually it becomes such a grind for them that a lot of them end up caving and either coming on board as a contractor with one of the larger players, or just going straight to having them buy their truck or lease their truck from them, and then just driving straight for one of the larger players.
Back to technology, a different one. Blockchain is many times cited as a game changer for supply chain
Sure.
transparency, right? How do you see that being implemented effectively to improve tracking and trust?
Yeah, I think this is a big one, and I've thought a lot about the space and the end game of where I believe the global consumer is going to want to have visibility to the products. And I believe that having a digital copy essentially of products, from the supplies all the way through to the finished goods, and all of them that make up the process along the way. Having visibility to that and tracking along that path in a trust-based way, such as blockchain can offer, I think is going to go a long way towards some of the things that I think consumers are really wanting, and isn't really available right now. I know that there's a couple of players in this space, but it's the biggest the biggest hurdle that you'll find without having some sort of standardization brought on by government bodies is you might have a provider that brings that on board for, the supplies coming inbound, but then the outbound, supplies to, or the outbound finished goods are, through a different provider and they just don't have it. So now you're kind of, you've got part of the way, but you're not end to end visible on that digital, footprint of the supplies.
And do you think this is something that can be solved by private players in the space, or there are standards that the government should put in place? What do you think about that?
I think that it could be done either way. We've seen it before in the U.S. with private industry coming together on putting forth some standards. In the U.S. we now have a what they call an EBOL, electronic bill of lading, that they're trying to implement and standardize. It has standardized API access to it, and standardized formatting. That's something that I think is kind of a step in that direction, and I think that could be used as a framework for a broader adoption of this kind of thing. But governments obviously have the leg up when it comes to putting in a mandate and just saying this is how we have to do things, and industry has to follow it then. And that really, I think there's times for that. There's times that that can get industry into trouble and put far reaching goals on an industry that's not ready to support it. But I think with the advent of AI in the past few years, how just integral it's come into the technology space, and specifically the development space. I think that to say that it isn't possible to achieve would be it's just not true. There's so much that can be developed right now, very, very quickly. And so I believe that if a government body or government bodies were to come in with a mandate of this kind of a process, I think that it could be adopted, and industry could support it.
Got it. Um, when we think about disruptions to logistics and supply chain, we typically think about natural disasters, geopolitical tensions, etc. Are those the main issues that supply chains and logistics face, or what else? What else is a typical hurdle that industry companies in this space might face?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, those are big ones. And those are ones that are very acute. They happen quickly, and you have to adapt very quickly. Whereas, change in the market itself from, the being kind of what I would call a buyer's market to a seller's market, and back and forth there, capacity being low. And so that'll drive, a change in how the market can adapt. And fuel can play a very big part in that as well. The access to inexpensive energy for the supply chain. I think that all of those things have a solution as far as how to adapt your supply chain around them. Obviously there's perfect storms that there would be no adaptation possible, if let's say a geopolitical event were to be so wide ranging that there is no solution. But,
Right.
For acute geopolitical events within a particular, like, let's take the example of, inbound supplies from X country coming into Y country. Those are things where typically those the manufacturer who's bringing those supplies in will have contingency suppliers within other within other geographies. And I think that those can be leveraged much quicker and much more automatically if there were the ability to have a visible geopolitical supply chain automation decision
Right.
tree. That's something that right now just doesn't exist very well. I know that again, some of the larger players do have some aspects there, but I think that really just does not touch the industries where it really hurts them drastically. I'll take an example. I had a client who was a large manufacturer in Canada, and retailer, and their inbound supplies they would get from very many countries in South Asia. It was,
Right.
they had suppliers all over, and their main goal was to have the ability to have at least a dashboard to port closures, to port congestion, weather, things like that, so that they could make decisions around that and reroute supplies, or reroute a shipment that's could maybe just be delivered to another port. That's really just not something that was accessible to them. They brought on another player, a platform in the United States that they were using for to gain visibility, and they were told that that platform was going to support the port closure, the congestion,
Mm.
ETAs, and in practice it did not. So they were quite disappointed. And after working with them and trying to find an alternate solution, we weren't able to do it. It wasn't something where, unless they go with one of the very large platforms that costs a lot of money and take a lot of time to implement, just wasn't accessible to them.
How far do you think technology is going to bring the automation of those decision points that we were talking about, right? And
Mhm.
what are the challenges in going further in that automation?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the challenges are pretty vast, and we've touched on a couple of them. I think full automation is on the horizon. It's something where with artificial intelligence and agentic AI, the ability to bring your entire supply chain, every single leg of it, into these decisions with all of the data available to it is very achievable. I think that it is very achievable, and I think that it's something where the challenges are going to be, um, you know uh, the smaller players that can play in this market are going to need to, it's more difficult for them to build the end-to-end processes to achieve that kind of holy grail of it. But it's really necessary for somebody to come along and focus on that, because again, the last thing that we want is consolidation of the larger corporations. And I think that that's something that will happen very quickly if the smaller companies are left behind there.
And do you think technology, so to automate those decision points, you also need um, a vast number of options, right? Options so
Mhm.
that you can choose from here or here or here, and
Mhm.
sometimes there are relationships that you need to be able to leverage different carriers, different et cetera, right?
Sure. Yeah,
Do
absolutely.
you think systems will help that as well in that redundancy to build resilience?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the marketplace is something where that can be built in as well. Talk about that end-to-end kind of holy grail supply chain solution, the ability to have a marketplace of suppliers that, maybe you don't have that relationship built currently, but that's something where, your current supplier or suppliers, maybe all of them are just, for some geopolitical reason or some weather event happens, they're offline. Having the ability to switch over to a new supplier, and then same thing for the carriers, having that marketplace. It really is kind of it requires either close close working closely together with other software platforms. If a platform comes in and they want to be that one end-to-end solution, well, you're going to have gaps. So I think that there's going to need to be interoperability between the various platforms out there, and standardization within that communication between the platforms, I think is going to help achieve that. But it comes down to having thought through the entire, if this happens, how can I pivot? What can I do about that? And having that portion covered as well. Not just identifying that there's an issue, but helping automate the process of solving that issue is very key to building this kind of a end-to-end solution.
I think this is a great segue for you to tell us more about your new startup. What problem are you solving, and how do you envision it reshaping logistics and supply chain management?
Sure. Well, I'm not ready to divulge too much yet. I will tell you that a lot of the points that we talked about today are things that I'm thinking about, and I'm very focused on the smaller side of the industry. I really do have a strong urge and a pull, just inside of myself to make sure that that somebody's looking after that portion of industry. I think that the main players that are going to be in this market are really going to be looking after the larger corporations, and that's just the end game. There is not something that I revel in. I would really prefer for something within the smaller industry to have the ability to achieve what they're looking for, which is a level playing field, democratization within it, being able to compete. And so those are the things that I'm focused on. Leveraging artificial intelligence, leveraging automation within there to try and bridge that gap and bring them onto that level playing field. I'm having a lot of fun doing it, by the way.
Happy to hear that. Is there a part of it that goes back to being kind of the connector between different platforms, right? You were saying that you cannot get all the pieces at once. You sometimes need to interact with our platforms. Is there a part of your solution that is just very good at connecting different pieces coming from many different sources?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of my key areas of expertise throughout my 20 years at Shipper's Edge was, I built a lot of integrations, a whole lot of integrations, and they were ranging from, integrations with our platform to ERPs to WMSs, various carriers, visibility platforms, and really the full gambit, and utilizing so many different technologies to do so. And so that is going to be key. That is very key to, any platform, I believe, needs to have a wide ranging ecosystem that they connect with, and have an open mind to even talking with competitors. I think that that's really, really important. I think that take a TMS, for example. If a TMS is up and running, and they're saying, we're not going to, which I've ran into this before, by the way, we're not going to, build any integrations with any other TMSs. That really shuts off a lot of potential, automation and connectivity for your customers. And I think that it's key to every system should have the potential to talk to every other system. Now, obviously, building out an integration with every system is impossible, relatively speaking, unless standardization is part of that. But being open to it and filling those gaps where it's necessary.
What's next for you on your startup? Is it releasing an MVP? Is it getting customers, building your team, finding partners? Where are you on your journey?
Yeah, kind of all the above. Right now, I'm working on the MVP. I'm getting very, very close to it. We're gonna be hopefully launching some some marketing efforts to try and drive some initial pilot customers and build a wait list for a full launch. And at the same token, I'm out there fundraising. I'm working on those efforts. The number of different hats that a startup founder wears is kind of crazy sometimes. It was not something that I've ever done before. It's fun. It's interesting. It's very interesting. It's wading into waters that I'm unfamiliar, but I love that kind of, I love unfamiliar. It's kind of where I thrive. I love to learn. So, it's day in, day out, what should I do today? Product is always been my main focus, and I love focusing my efforts there, but shifting gears over to strategy and fundraising and marketing, those pieces are fun too. And that's really where we're on the cusp, I think, right now, is trying to make that launch, raise those funds, and have this thing kind of take off in the way that I'm really hoping it will.
If anyone is listening and they want to help, should they reach out to you on LinkedIn? What's the best way to get in touch with you
Sure,
and
yeah,
help with
LinkedIn.
things?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great. I'm just Joseph Taylor -MN on LinkedIn, and that's for Minnesota. That's where I'm currently at. And yeah, I've been talking to a lot of different funds and a lot of different people, and I'm always happy to have conversations and continue that effort. Yeah.
About the future, where do you see the logistics and supply chain industry in the next 10 years?
10 years is a long time. I think that, especially today, it is crazy. You know, I look down the line 1 year in the software engineering space, and that kind of scares me. Um, 10 years in logistics, again, it's always been a slow adopter of technologies. But I believe that there will be a driver, really out of necessity towards automation. I think that, AI being at the heart of it, self-driving, trucks is going to be key. And I believe that that is really close. I think that, some other technology that will maybe open up the ability for goods to be transported, without the need for trucks may come along and really drive some further growth there. But I think that, for any of that to occur, governments are going to need to make some infrastructure investments, which they've been slow to do, at least in the U.S.
Right.
So the self-driving truck space is something that I think in the United States, for instance, can really take off, but without government right there with it, and building the infrastructure around it, it's going to require more efforts in the autonomous driving space and regulatory requirements that are just still in place. So, but I think 10 years, I think we see all of that. I don't see why not.
We live in interesting times and change is happening
We
very,
sure
very
do.
fast.
We sure do.
Joe, well, one last question, very random to
Mhm.
you. What do you do when you
Sure.
are not working? I know that being a startup founder, you don't have a lot of time, but if you want
Yeah.
to just relax, what do you do?
Yeah. So, I have 5 kids. Shout out to my oldest, who's actually in Navy boot camp right now. Hayden, he's doing a great job. I talked to him 2 days ago, I think it was, and he's really excited to be done in 4 weeks, 3 weeks now. And then, I've got 4 other little ones. I've got a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, Theodore and Evelyn, respectively. And then 2 older, 17 and 18-year-old, Adeline and Nathaniel. So kind of the full gambit there. Keeps me very, very busy. Um, my wife and I are, professionals at just the family logistics space, and I joke sometimes that maybe I should make an FMS, a family logistics management software solution, because it's a lot. I know that there are some out there, but I've never found a good one. There's a lot that goes into who's picking up who, what's going on today, all of that. So that keeps me very busy. I do have a weekly, effort that I have where I just do, usually by myself. I just kind of take the evening to myself and decompress.
Right.
Maybe go to a movie, go out to dinner by myself. Sometimes I'll go with a friend. But I really kind of revel that time alone because I don't get a lot of it. How about
I
yourself?
I get you completely. I've been picking up so I picked up swimming. So every day 7 a.m. I go swim for an hour,
Nice.
and that's 1 hour of silence, just me with myself, swimming, right? So that's
Yeah.
beautiful. I play drums,
Yeah.
get with friends from time to time. I go surfing from time to time,
Oh,
bodyboarding,
fun.
actually. Yeah, but I have two little kids and I spend most of my time with them as well. So you have five. I completely get it. You are a
Yeah.
hero. I can see why you are in logistics. If you can figure out five kids, then you can figure out, all the problems in the world.
I don't know that I figured out five kids, by the way. It's a work in progress. Let's put it that way.
Work in progress. Very good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Joe, this has been an amazing conversation. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having this
Yeah.
conversation with
Thank you.
me, and I hope we can do this again sometime in the future.
Absolutely. I love it. Thank you very much, Mateo. I appreciated the time.